Well, hello, everybody. We're here live on YouTube, doing a little YouTube live just to experiment. I do most of these on Facebook, but I want to build up this sort of viewer slash listener base here. And one of the ways that we can do that is to broaden the exposure on here by getting more and more people to sort of feed back to it. And so if you're so inclined to incorporate, your questions into the chat, I'd love to hear what you have to say about the topic that I'm going to discuss today. This is one of those things where I feel like I'm opening a can of worms a little bit by even talking about this topic, but I think it's an important topic to discuss because I don't think it's a zero sum game. We're talking about mouthpiece buzzing. We're talking specifically about whether mouthpiece buzzing is good for you as a developing brass player or if it's not good for you as a developing brass player. I have friends and respected colleagues on both sides of the issue. And I actually think there's more than two sort of categories of people. There's three, perhaps four categories of people who have a position on this topic. It's not as simple as the do's and don'ts. It's the do's with these conditions, the do's with these conditions, and the don'ts. Or maybe even better put, the do's with conditions, the don'ts with conditions, and the don'ts, if that makes sense. So I grew up in Texas where the teachers that I studied with, some were, they were never were averse to mouthpiece buzzing, but it wasn't central to their teaching. They might have me do it occasionally if we thought about it. But it wasn't a thing that was just a core sort of central element to your development on the instrument. It was just not really thought of. And that's okay. It's fine. I got pretty far without it. And then I started working with Don Lucas. There's a whole long story about how Don Lucas was one of my high school band directors for a year at a very crucial stage in my life and in his career right before he went to Texas Tech. So this is like 1993. I was a freshman in high school. And he really helped me dial some things in with the mouthpiece. It was tremendous. And it immediately helped me in some huge ways. So with my experience on the mouthpiece, it was a good thing. Fast forward a few years, I had my car wreck. And part of my face, a quadrant of my face, just kind of stopped working for 6 months. Imagine Bell's palsy, but through the impact of an airbag. Free buzzing, rim buzzing, mouthpiece buzzing brought symmetry back to my chops and allowed me to play again. So another vote in favor of mouthpiece buzzing. And it wasn't really until more recently that I started hearing about people who have the opposing view. Now, I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm not here to say that I'm right and anyone's wrong. I'm just trying to better understand why some people are so averse to it. Now, it matters how we use it, right? So I don't have everyone buzz 15 minutes a day at the beginning of their practice session. I don't have anyone buzz at the beginning of their practice session for any length of time, unless they just want to do it or feel like it's helpful for them. It's not how we tend to use it. We tend to use it more as a tool to help when there's an issue in the playing. For example, I'm working on a Bordoni, and for whatever reason, I just can't get this triad or this series of notes in this arpeggio to really speak well, to really be efficient, to really be working very well. Okay. So in that situation, I would pull the mouthpiece. I would go note by note, maybe play the first note on the trombone, then buzz the note on the mouthpiece to make sure that I'm buzzing in the center of the pitch. And I might play the second note on the horn, then buzz the first note that I just buzzed plus the second note. Then I might go back to the trombone, buzz the third note, then play the first three, and work my way through the small chunk of passage that's causing the issue making sure that I'm dead on center pitch with the mouthpiece on every note. And I'm going to buzz it as a gliss buzzed connection of notes, connection of vibrations. And then I'm going to put the mouthpiece back in the trombone and I'm going to play the phrase again and I'm going to see if it's better. And then we're going to move on with practicing. There's no more mouthpiece buzzing. Now, I cannot imagine how a technique that's used in that way could ever be seen as anything but positive, especially if it results in an improved performance of the phrase. That seems like it seems reasonable that I would be confused by why that would be a bad thing. Now, there are many different opinions about how to buzz, when to buzz, what to buzz. I have heard people who talk about buzzing, you buzz as loud as you can and you just build strength. I don't know if strength is the right answer. I don't know if we're supposed to lean in on being strong. To me, strength comes through relaxation and resonance, where I'm working less hard for more results rather than working harder for diminished results. And that's a big deal because this is a long game. Hopefully, we're wanting to play the trombone or any other brass instrument for a long time. And I want to do everything I can to maximize the amount of time that I play. And if I herniate muscles in my body or tear something in my chops or push so hard or squeeze so much that like I mess up an eardrum or move a tooth or anything like that, then it's not what I want to do. It's not the approach that I want to take. I want to make a resonant, beautiful sound. I don't want to be able to turn the volume up on that resonant, beautiful sound and play with a big, present, beautiful sound. And I want to be able to turn the volume down on that and play with a very focused, clear, beautiful sound. And every now and then I know, particularly if it's a key that's distant from the home key of the trombone, so something at the bottom of the circle of fifths, typically is where I find myself needing to buzz more than ever. Key of F sharp, key of B. Then I'm going to use that as a tool to help me improve my overall playing. Now, from what I gather, there are two main arguments against this, and please correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. One, this is the one that Christian Lindbergh discussed many years ago in a video now that is semi-famous in the trombone world, I guess, which whatever that means. That since what we do on the mouthpiece is so different from what we do when we play the trombone, or that maybe the sound that you get on the trombone, if you buzz that sound into the horn with the intent of trying to buzz, that it doesn't get the kind of sound that he wants, so he doesn't do it. He sees it as a sort of a needless gesture. It's like, what's the point in doing it if it's not what I do when I play? And that makes total sense. And if I was trying to buzz an entire etude or passage from a solo, then I would probably agree. I don't want to do anything that is antithetical to playing the horn. But there's another argument that mouthpiece buzzing is directly responsible for or connected to the responsibility for developing issues like task-specific focal dystonia. Sorry, I figured I'd get it out eventually. Task-specific focal dystonia. And that mouthpiece buzzing, I don't know if it's because it's so different from playing the instrument, because it sort of short circuits a neural pathway. I don't know enough about it to know what the specific argument against it is. And I'd like to know more. I'd really like to know if there's a medical reason why it's bad. But the finest brass players that I have worked with personally, I've not worked with Mr. Lindbergh personally. The finest brass players that I know over and over again tell me, the majority of those players tell me that mouthpiece buzzing is it's an important part of their playing, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. And that at certain times it's been crucial in their development. Other times they might do less and less of it when they don't feel like they need to. But it's a diagnostic tool. It's a tool to fix little problems here and there. And then they move on from it. I don't know too many people who just buzz for, 45 minutes. I've done the buzzing book. It has a lot of buzzing in it, and probably too much buzzing for me. But I'm sure as heck going to keep doing it until somebody can explain to me why it's a bad thing. And then I'll listen. I will listen. And I might reserve judgment until after I hear what they have to say before I make a decision. But I just don't understand why it's such a controversial thing. We can disagree on things. It's not all that different in terms of the positions on it. Well, I guess maybe it is very different. But another topic that people tend to get in the weeds about is uh, tongue everything legato and natural slur legato. And I have had teachers who have been dyed in the wool, one camp or the other. They either play tongue on every legato passage that's ever been made, or they natural slur whenever possible, tongue only whenever necessary, or whenever the absence of a tongue would cause a smear or a gliss. And then I'm over here thinking, well, there's times that I use both. I've studied with people who advocate both. I find situations where both are appropriate, or one is more appropriate than the other. And in order to sound the way that I want to sound on the piece of music, I incorporate the method that allows me to do that. So maybe there's a third stream. I hope what I would love is for there to be a third stream that emerges out of some of these arguments, these generations old discussions about this is good, this is bad, this is better, this is worse. Can a third stream emerge that says, for some students, mouthpiece buzzing is great and it's beneficial and it's helpful and it's therapeutic and they should do it. And for other students who maybe don't need it, or it somehow messes with their ears and their chops and everything, that they shouldn't do it. And furthermore, why? What are the criteria for making that decision? What are the criteria for saying this student should do it, this student should not? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that. That's not what the point of the video is. The point of the video is to ask those questions and to start a conversation because, I've been doing this a long time, and I used to think that it was my responsibility when I would come online or when I would talk to someone to have the answer, the just carved in stone answer. Damn it, this is right. And now I look at it and I think, I don't know if right is the correct way to look at it. I don't know if being right is the answer. And I don't think I think having a firm foundation and a solid belief in what you think and how you think it should be done is important because you have to have things that you can tether to. So, because otherwise you just, flip flop on every issue all the time. And students don't know what they should do. They need to have more foundation than that. But I think we all need to have enough flexibility to be willing to revisit things from time to time and say, okay, maybe I was wrong about that. Or maybe I've entered a new season, or maybe kids are different, or maybe there's there's a reason why, I don't know, they're not pulling wisdom teeth as young as they used to. So chops are different. So this generation is, developmentally and developing in some different way. And so we don't need to mouthpiece buzz because there are issues going on with the dental structures that have never been an issue before. I don't know. All I'm saying is that as teachers, I think it's absolutely vitally important to us, or to the future of what we do, to be willing to take any topic related to what we do and ask if I'm on solid ground about that topic. Is what I believe about this topic? I'm not, this is off the top of the head, so you'll have to forgive me a little bit. I get kind of riled up and then I have to think about this for a second before I give it to you. But so there are things that we teach because we're taught them. And then there are things that we teach because we believe them. We've experienced them. We've gone through it. We've come out on the other side stronger, with more insight. And now we teach it because we believe it. And for that season of time, it's the thing that we are absolutely just just absolutely tethered to. Like, I am absolutely convinced that the Schlossberg book and the Irons book, when put together, are a solid 1-2 punch for any brass player that's trying to develop tone, flexibility, endurance. They're both really old books. They come from diverse backgrounds. They're both trumpet books. Okay, so what else can I learn from trumpets? Maybe I need to check out the Top Tones book. Okay, so I'm going to check out the Top Tones book. Luckily, I'm married to a trumpet player, and I have access to her entire book library. And I go to the Top Tones book, and I'm like, okay, these are wearing me out. How are trumpet players able to play them? Well, they play an instrument that's half the length of my trombone, so I need to recognize that my phrasing, I need to breathe twice as often as the book notates. Same thing as you would do if you're working out of any trumpet book. That's why if you compare a trombone arbin to a trumpet arbin, the breathing patterns are slightly different. But what else can I learn? And then you start to learn that Schlossberg worked with more than just trumpet players. And that you learn that he didn't write the book, that it was Schlossberg's exercises compiled by his son after he died. So Schlossberg would have this like notepad of staff paper, and you'd come into his teaching studio in New York, and he would listen to you play, and then he would like write the exercise out like a doctor writes a prescription, tears it off of his pad, hands you this little strip of paper, 2 staff paper lines long, with an exercise on it. And I think he had carbon paper copies of these things. So he had hundreds of exercises in his office. And somehow there was a record kept because you'd come back in for your next lesson and you'd have that thing learned. And he'd critique it and maybe tweak the exercise a little bit or go say, no, you need to go do more. It was only after he died that his son compiled all these things. And then the bass trombone version the bass clef version for trombone is not exactly the same set of exercises as the trumpet book. So if we have all these hard and fast things that we believe in, what's changed in the trombone arbin from the original trumpet arbin? Is the ta and ka syllable or the tu and ku syllable that they use in the French language the same as what we use in English? It's not. And so all the things that I have found for years that I thought I was in solid ground about, no, it's absolutely the best book for this thing. And we do it this way because my teacher told me to do it this way, and their teacher told them to do it that way, and their teacher told them to do it that way. It reminds me of a story about a family who was getting ready to cook the holiday meal, the Thanksgiving meal or the Christmas meal, and they want to do a ham. They do a ham every year, and the youngest generation is wanting to take over the holiday meal prep, and the older family members are like, absolutely, take it on, it's yours. So they're in the kitchen with the ham, and they're cutting the end off the ham, and then they're putting it in the pan with the big piece of ham. And one of the family members says to the other, why are you cutting off the end of the ham? Well, mom always did it. Well, let's find out why. I'm curious. So hey, mom, why do you cut off the end of the ham? Well, my mom always cut the end off the ham. I think that she did it because it was juicier that way, or it allowed to get rid of some more of the salt brine. I'm sure she had a really good reason. And so they know that grandma's going to be at the meal tomorrow, but she's still at assisted living tonight. So they actually call over and they ask her, hey, grandma, we're putting together the ham for tomorrow. Why do you cut off the end of the ham? Is it to help the ham taste better? She's like, no, honey, cut off the ham because when me and your grandfather were first married, my roasting pan was too small for any ham that I could buy. And so she was cutting the ham off for a practical reason. And 2 generations removed, they think she's doing it for some big culinary reason. So this invites, I think, a bigger discussion than just mouthpiece buzzing. We need to do things, and we need to know that we're doing them because they're beneficial for the student. And if we're going to say that something is absolutely great for you or absolutely bad for you, we better know why. We better know why. And I want to know why. Let's see what we have here in the chat. So we've got, good evening, Michael Swan. Tend to tell students what I do, why I do it that way, where I see benefit. Acknowledge that everyone's physiology is different. What works for me may not work for you. Doesn't matter if it's mouthpiece buzzing where we set the mouthpiece, the amount of tension in the face, whatever. Okay, so I'm down with you on lots of this. I will say that if a kid comes into me and they put the mouthpiece as low as they possibly can on the top lip, I'm not going to say you do what works best for you, because I don't find that kind of setting is going to work best. I try to give them a general guide, sort of like margins, right? So like left to right, there's a certain margin. Up and down, there's a certain margin. 2/3, 1/3, 1/3, 2/3, but no more either way. A certain amount of lateral movement. No past the eye teeth if possible, unless it's just a real straggler tooth. And then a lot of those other things take care of themselves when the rest of the stuff is set up correctly. But I do agree that like we need to be able to look at them on an individual basis. I don't know, but it is a topic that I think is important to discuss. And it's one that I hope can be an ongoing topic. We get into these seasons where things just sort of, I don't know, people get bored or stuff sort of churns up. It shows up again on Reddit, and then someone shares it with their friend group, and all of a sudden everyone's up in arms about the topic again. Happens every so often with the Lindbergh video where he denounces mouthpiece buzzing, or you've got some trumpet player that's talking about their super chopped system that will fix your playing in 5 days. And then everyone has a, conniption fit about it, either in support or detracting from it. And it's fine that people are passionate about it, but instead of being like angry, I'd love to get past the anger and get to the actual discussion where we can make it better. So those are some of my thoughts going into my spring break. I'm actually getting ready to do a virtual class with the trombone studio at LSU tomorrow. Then I have a couple students coming in for some lessons this week. I'm looking forward to working with everybody. It's been an interesting season for all of that. I've learned a lot from the people that I've worked with, and I want to thank everybody who's auditioned for the studio this year. We've had I'm not going to say a record number, but it's been a very high number of applicants and people who've come and played for me. And the overall ability level, it amazes me how well everyone's playing. There's a lot of really great players out there. And we've had students come in from multiple states, and I've heard students from Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. It's kind of cool to hear Florida, Ohio, Colorado, other places. It's kind of cool because you hear the overall level improving every year a little bit. They're wiser to things that I was absolutely clueless about. And I just think it's cool to see it developing that way. Got another comment here in the chat. Fuji Apple 9675. As a trumpet player, I've seen a plethora of perspectives with regard to mouthpiece buzzing. Of the opinion that it has utility, if my intonation is funky on one particular passage. What's the deal here? Here we go. Then buzzing while listening to the pitch without the instrument helps the passage 99% of the time. I couldn't agree more. I think it's super helpful. It helps me with intonation and centering my tone on any individual pitch. That's particularly, like I said, if it's far away from the home key of my instrument. So if I'm in trombone is in B flat, concert B flat. So if I have a passage in B or G flat or F sharp, any of the keys, even 5 flats, there's some things in there that are funky. And one of the best ways that I found is to maybe sit in front of the piano or having a drone, being able to generate those pitches and get into the absolute center of the sound. It's super helpful. Thank you for the comment, Fuji Apple. I don't know if we know each other, but if we don't, I'd like to. I just wish I want people to have an anonymity on here, but if it's someone that I know, I'm like, I would love to be able to say hello, Billy, or hello, Rachel, or whoever you might be. So yeah, thank you. That's I think that's super helpful. And it's funny because my wife's a trumpet player, studied with people, Barbara and Charlie and David Hickman. Oh, hey, John. Good to see you. She has a similar opinion about it. She does some, but it doesn't inundate the practice. It makes it It's a part of what we do. It's not central. It's not the only thing. I don't want to be known as the mouthpiece buzzing guy. I want to be known as the guy that plays with a free, easy, resonant, beautiful sound. And that's the brass playing that as I get older is the most important thing to me. Is it beautiful? There are times when it should be angry and aggressive, but the sound should still be like, should have shoulders. It should be able to walk in the room and have a presence. And a lot of that comes from what we do inside the mouthpiece cup. So I've actually gotten some comments off of YouTube about this that I'm going to take time to read separately. I'm not going to violate the confidence of the person that sent me the message because I don't know if they want me to go public, but they have some thoughts about the third stream that I was talking about of pedagogy between it being the best thing ever and being the worst thing ever, that there's somewhere in between the two. I'm going to read that because that's exactly the kind of thing that I was hoping that people would share. So thank you. You know who you are if you're still watching. I appreciate you. Let's see. Isaac, one of my former graduate students. Hello, Isaac. You find that buzzing is more effective for younger students with less developed tone? I've got a student I'm trying to do this with now. I think it's in the younger they are, the less I would do, but I would do it. And I do it in a different way. So here's what I mean. If we're working on Bordoni number 5, working on the opening passages of that, and we're just trying to make sure that we're playing note, 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 and each of them is centered, I'm going to try to get them to buzz that specific passage. And I'm going to try to get them to buzz that specific passage on pitch. For younger players, if we're still trying to like find their sound and maybe even to some degree, if I say find the groove of their embouchure, I hope you know what I mean. I'm not talking about an actual physical like notch in their lips, but there's a place where the mouthpiece sets where it's comfortable. I'm going to have them do a lot of siren work and not necessarily super wide sirens. I hope I don't blow out I'm going to try to back up from the mic a little bit. And if a fifth is too wide, then we narrow it. And if they're able to handle the perfect fifth, then we expand to maybe a sixth or all the way to an octave. You have to find the threshold to what they can do and then back away from it a little bit. I don't think anybody should try to be buzzing 3 octaves on the mouthpiece. I think if it looks difficult for them, like they have an eye popping out and their face is turning beet red and, you know, trickle of drool coming out of one side of their mouth, then they're probably pushing themselves too hard. I think the most important thing is that whatever they do on the mouthpiece, it's easy. So one of the things that I'll do is if we're working on lip slurs, 3-note slur, B flat, F, B flat. I want to get them making the mechanism of pitch change happen here. And then I want the instrument slotting the actual harmonic series 4, 3, 2, and the partials. If I'm providing the resonance and the vibration into the horn, the trombone can provide the slotting. Now, at a certain point, this becomes a partnership, but they have to know where that slotting happens on the horn. And I think if they aim for each note, what ends up happening is that they back off on the air between them. And that's when you get the surges. Instead of a where we tone out the whole time. And then you can have them augment or adjust the gliss buzz so they do land on the note. And the gliss is faster and takes up less of the body of sound. hope that makes sense. I've found that if we can get that mechanism working correctly, it helps establish firm corners, flat chin, no peach pitting, where the chin bunches up towards the mouthpiece in the middle. Because what's happening when they're peach pitting is they are pushing the bottom lip up to make the aperture smaller, and they achieve a certain amount of success at that. But it's engaging a lip in a way that I think is it's antithetical to long-term development. The load happens here and with a flat chin. It's harder to tell with my goatee, but if I want to get those things to lock in, I have to start to develop the musculature of the corners and the chin. I have to get those things working, because honestly, if those things get working and I can remind them from time to time that the cheeks should stand tall against the teeth, then I can avoid ever having to tell them to not don't puff your cheeks, don't puff your cheeks. I can avoid that comment completely, because there's parts of the brain, there have been developments that have said that it's sort of like saying, don't get nervous, don't get nervous, don't get nervous. All the body focuses on is the act of getting nervous, and that you're trying to suppress it. It's no different on the brain level than get nervous, get nervous, get nervous. All it thinks about is nervous as a concept. If you tell a student, don't puff their cheeks, don't puff your cheeks, don't puff your cheeks, there's not a lot of a difference between puffing and not puffing. It's very strange, but I find that it's most effective doing it this way, where we focus on keeping those structures strong. John Kitzman, former principal trombone in the Dallas Symphony, would talk about getting the corners into position and stapling them into place. Boom. Boom. Staple them into place. And no matter what you do when you play the horn, the corners are engaged. Now, I think there's a slippery slope between engagement and flexing and making them all tight, because then what can happen is you can get tight all the way across here. And Isaac, I'm sure you've seen me do this before in lessons. I think seem to remember, I'm sure it came up at some point. But if you have very little adjustment to the pitch. Now, I'm a traditional downstream player. My top lip is my vibrating lip. I'm touching them the same way. There's a significant more impact on the vibration when I touch the top lip. Now, obviously, the mouthpiece makes contact, but it makes contact to create a seal. It does not make contact for mushing it into place. Mushing it into place causes certain vibrations to go away, and I have to work harder to get the sound to happen, and see how it becomes a negative sort of spiral. So I found it to be, I found that to be really helpful. I don't know. It's interesting. Let's see here. Their sound might be the most pinched sound I've encountered. I'm hoping removing the trombone from the equation can help them relax with no framework set by the trombone. I think it goes both ways. I think you need to inspect their horn and play it. You need to physically, if they play a small bore instrument, keep a small bore mouthpiece in your bag so you're not blowing on their mouthpiece, especially with all the funk that's going around this year. But as I cough, try their horn. There may be some weird thing. There was an instrument made by, I'm trying to remember who made it. It might have been an Eastman trombone. It was a trombone made for beginners that had this plastic hand piece that fit inside the slide box where you put your fingers when you hold the horn. And then it had a bend in the neck pipe that was like a half moon that allowed the trombone to sit lower because they were a smaller stature person. And I found those horns to be incredibly stuffy, like very, very stuffy. I don't even know if they make them anymore. But I found that if I could get them on a trombone that didn't have that extra stuff, it made it better. And sometimes just a rando horn from the repair shop can have a glob of solder inside a crook when they took it apart to fix it after the last disaster. Make sure that their instrument works. I think that the majority of what needs to happen on the horn. And I haven't even gotten into the idea of modeling and playing back and forth yet. I think that, if you're playing a brass instrument and you're trying to get a better sound and you don't have a model for the sound that you're trying to achieve, then it's like going into a room with a dartboard and they hand you a handful of darts and they turn off all the lights and there's no windows and no light at all. And they say, hit the dartboard. Oh, and we're going to spin you around a little bit. And now you don't know exactly where you are in relation to the dartboard, but you better hit a target. You better hit a bullseye. Instead, if you remember from our lessons, sitting back across from each other in the room, in that long, skinny room at Arkansas State, there's a lot of back and forth. I play, you play, I play, you play, or you play, I play, you play, I play, or we play duets together, giving them a model to fashion their sound after. I am almost over encouraging students to listen to performances. I don't feel like they have the attention span to do it. Maybe they will if it's rep that they really, really like, and that can be a jumping off point. It makes me sad, but I don't remember listening to a lot of stuff. I hated listening when it was assigned to music history. And it was only after I became keenly interested in orchestral repertoire that I found myself, well, my favorite Mahler symphony is Mahler 4. I should probably have my trombone card taken away, but it's my favorite Mahler symphony. And it's because I listened to 5, 2, 7, and then I heard Ehrlicht. And I went, I want to hear that with the orchestra. Then I heard the whole piece and I fell in love with it. And so listening to great artists, both recordings when they're not capable of getting to a live concert, but hearing live brass playing is the single biggest way that you can develop tone. So play for them a lot. Have a duet book in your bag or on your iPad all the time. The Voxman Selected Duets, Volume 1 and 2 is a great place to start. They're not as difficult as the Amsden. They're not as notey. The Alessi Michael Sachs duet book is pretty good, but it's kind of notey. For older students, it works great. But the Voxman's awesome, especially Volume 1, because they're short. It helps them learn how to read the duet sort of model of Grandstaff. And it helps them learn how to blend their sound with yours. And you're giving them the target to aim for. I want to sound like Mr. Atherton. And then Mr. Atherton's like, well, I'm flattered that you want to sound like me, but here's this person. Sound like them. And here's this other person. I really like the articulation from that person. And I like the tone quality from that person. And do you hear that person's phrasing? And if we're going to talk about phrasing, well, let's talk about Ella Fitzgerald. Let's talk about Dawn Upshaw. It's people who have nothing to do with the trombone. Let's talk about Bryn Terfel. We listen to Bryn Terfel play the Songs of Travel, and then we listen to a recording of Chris Bassett play the Songs of Travel. And now we've brought it full circle where we've listened to trombone, non-trombone, and back to trombone. And it helps them cultivate what the sound is that they're trying to achieve. Because think about how we learn our mother tongue, our first language. We don't learn it by somebody sitting down with us with a language book. I mean, we read to our children, but they mimic us. They go, mama. They reach out for the apple and they want the apple, or they actually want the cookie. And you say cookie, say cookie, and they learn how to mimic what they hear from us. Why is brass playing any different? Is it for academic reasons because someone has some journal that said that it has to be done this way? I want the most expedient way that's going to help them develop as fast as I can, because they don't have the attention span to stick with it unless they're achieving some level of success on a regular basis. And success can be as big as achieving an all district honor kind of thing, or it can be as small as I played the next note in the chromatic scale today. Mom, I can play with a good sound now. And they're going to be more interested in like getting the horn out of the case and playing. This is the good stuff. This is the good stuff. Let's see. Matt Hayslip. Hey, buddy. How's it going? Good to see you last week. Buzzing did not work for me when I was playing with a super wide aperture from playing on too small of an inner diameter with upper lip pinned open a bit. Buzzing made me feel tight. When I changed my embouchure to a more close vibration, buzzing finally made everything better. Buzzing made me feel tight. When I changed my embouchure to a more close vibration. Close vibration. Do you mean like really focusing into like imagining that you're buzzing straight down the shank or straight down into the throat of the mouthpiece? Okay, interesting. I want to talk to you about that more. Recently repaired their horn, newer 80AH plays good. Then I would say if the horn works mechanically well, Isaac, then just do a lot of back and forth modeling. You have a great sound. Model that sound for them. Play for them, play with them. Ask them to compare and contrast their sound and your sound. And don't let them get away with the easy answer of, well, your sound's better than mine. No, 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 no. Attributes. What do you hear? How would you describe the sounds? Hope that helps. All right, heading home. All right, brother. Hope to see you at the end of the week. Also freeing up the upper lip by using a larger diameter. Relax the lower lip forward instead of rolled in. Okay, so you're actually talking about, did you start on cornet in Paris and then switch to horn later? Or were you a horn player from day one? Because this almost sounds like, okay, horn. Do you think that you were maybe taught by someone that was a trumpet player that maybe taught you a trumpet embouchure on horn? Because I'm wondering if that sounds like perhaps there was an issue of that kind of thing going on. I don't know. It's fairly common. Yeah, there's just many misconceptions over time. Okay, that's fair. I mean, people do talk about playing with a big sound, and I remember hearing Alessi for the first time on recording and thinking, this massive sound, and he does have a big sound. And I thought I needed to achieve that sound the way that I was hearing how do I say this without? So Joe sounds great live. I love the way Joe's plays. He's the most influential trombonist of my entire life. Hearing him live and hearing a recording of him are different because they can tweak everything in a recording and they can make him much more present in the mix, particularly when he plays pedal notes. It's big, fat pedal sound, but it's not like he's playing a 1G and a bass trombone. So hearing that made me think that he was doing one thing to achieve it. It's like I was reverse engineering what he was doing on the horn to kind of like figure out how he was doing it instead of asking the question, how do you do that? Or how does he do that? And I think we all go down those roads, but it's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I go back and forth on size, equipment, mouthpiece size. I'm on a 40-year-old 5G mouthpiece I've had it was old when I got it, and it's in pretty good shape. I worry that the plating is about to wear through. It's a little bit suspect, but for the time being, it works great until I find something better. But I've been focusing so much on process and like how to play the horn well. I'm trying to back off from thinking that, for me, it's not going to be a wild mouthpiece change. If I do change again, it's going to be something in the general realm of this that maybe has a slightly adjusted throat or a slightly adjusted backbore, or I'm pretty happy with the rim. Mine has much more to do with flow of air than what's happening sort of with the rim on the face. But it's definitely something that's interesting for sure. Well, we've been going at this for a little while, and I appreciate people sort of stepping in and having comments on this stuff. It's I want to start doing these, fairly regularly. I'd like to dig in on various topics, and I wish that there was I guess we could do a Discord thing where it could actually be a discussion, like back and forth. And I might look into doing something like that. I'm going to save this one and I'm going to publish it because I think there's some good stuff here. Although it kind of started out as a mouthpiece discussion, went away into some other things, and then came back. If somebody's willing to sort of sift through all that, maybe they'll find some good stuff in here. I had a couple of things here. It's why I could never play soft up high. It was all too open. That I totally agree with. I totally agree. Yeah, man, and I appreciate yours. Thank you for hopping on and sharing your thoughts. Um, yeah, good stuff. Well, thanks everybody. I hope that we're on spring break this next week, so I'm going to be taking care of all the things that I have not had time to take care of during the semester, and probably praying that I don't get sick. So I hope you're all well, and I'll catch you down the road. Take care.